Most people thought they already understood the dynamic between Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. To audiences across America, the formula seemed simple. Jerry was the wild genius, the unpredictable ball of energy who twisted his body into impossible shapes and turned physical comedy into an art form. Dean was the calm one, the straight man, the smooth singer with the handsome face and the relaxed smile who stood beside Jerry, delivering punchlines with effortless cool while the chaos exploded around him. It was a partnership that had taken them to the very top of show business by the mid-1950s. They were earning massive paychecks, filling nightclubs across the country, and starring in hit films for Paramount Pictures. Yet despite all that success, the entertainment world had quietly placed Dean Martin into a comfortable category. A great singer who happened to stand next to a brilliant comedian. Nobody thought of him as a dancer. Nobody imagined that movement itself could be one of his hidden talents. Then came a hot afternoon in July of 1955 inside the historic Majestic Theatre on West 44th Street in Manhattan. The theatre was being used for rehearsals that day, but the room held an unusual gathering. Some of the most respected figures in American dance had come together to watch something that was supposed to be routine. What they ended up witnessing would leave them stunned and permanently change the way they saw Dean Martin. The invitation had come from legendary choreographer Jack Cole, a man known for shaping the dance styles of Hollywood icons like Rita Hayworth and Marilyn Monroe. Cole was preparing a new variety show concept that would bring together Broadway talent and Hollywood performers. He wanted something fresh, something that would show audiences that entertainers could do more than just stay in their expected lanes. When he approached Martin and Lewis about headlining a segment, his request was simple but unusual. "I want to see what you can really do," Cole told them during their first meeting in his studio. Not the usual nightclub routine, not the rehearsed comedy bits. He wanted to examine their core abilities as performers. Jerry Lewis didn't worry about the request. Jerry had spent years studying movement and understood the mechanics of physical performance. Dean Martin, however, shifted slightly in his chair. When it came to dance training, he always described his experience as minimal. Back when he was still performing under the name Dino Crocetti in Ohio, he had taken a few basic lessons and picked up some stage habits along the way. But compared to trained dancers, he usually downplayed his abilities. "My training is pretty basic," Dean admitted honestly. "I can move around on stage, but I'm not really a dancer." Cole nodded thoughtfully and jotted something into a notebook. That was exactly why he wanted to see them in person. The choreographer believed that every performer had hidden layers, and sometimes the most surprising abilities appeared when someone stepped outside their usual role. The assessment was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon at the Majestic Theatre. Alongside Jack Cole sat three giants of the dance world. There was Maria Talchif, the trailblazing ballerina who had transformed American ballet with her power and precision. Nearby sat Bob Fosse, already gaining attention for the sharp, stylized movement that would later define his legendary career. Completing the group was Agnes DeMille, whose choreography in the Broadway musical Oklahoma had revolutionized storytelling through dance. It was an intimidating audience for anyone, especially for someone who insisted he wasn't really a dancer. Jerry Lewis went first. As expected, his performance delighted the experts. His body seemed made of rubber, twisting and bouncing through the choreography with energetic precision. He demonstrated strong rhythm, excellent balance, and the fluid control of someone who had spent years studying how the body could create comedy and movement simultaneously. The professionals nodded approvingly. Jerry was exactly what they expected him to be, a gifted physical performer. Then Dean Martin stepped onto the stage. He stood quietly at center stage while the pianist prepared the music. For a moment he looked slightly uneasy, but he carried himself with the calm confidence that had carried him through thousands of nightclub shows. The music began, a comfortable mid-tempo standard that allowed room for interpretation. For the first half-minute, nothing extraordinary happened. Dean followed the choreography just as the professionals anticipated. His movements were solid but simple. He kept time with the music and executed the steps with competent precision. From the seats in the theatre, the dance experts saw exactly what they expected, a talented singer doing his best to handle a dance routine. Then something changed. It happened so subtly at first that it was almost impossible to pinpoint the moment. Perhaps Dean relaxed into the rhythm. Perhaps the music unlocked something deeper in him. But suddenly his body began to move with a completely different kind of freedom. The stiffness vanished. The steps flowed together. Every gesture seemed connected to the music in a way that felt natural rather than rehearsed. Maria Talchif straightened in her seat. Years of watching dancers had trained her eye to recognize genuine artistry instantly, and she realized that the man on stage had just crossed an invisible line from competence into something much more profound. Dean's feet began finding rhythms inside the rhythm. His hands moved with expressive clarity, shaping the air around him as if translating sound into motion. The entire stage seemed to belong to him now, not because he demanded attention, but because his presence naturally commanded it. Jack Cole watched silently for a moment, then called out from the orchestra seats. "Forget the routine," he shouted. "Just move. Let the music tell you what to do." Dean paused briefly, closed his eyes, and listened. What happened next left the room speechless. Without choreography to guide him, Dean began to improvise. His movements blended elements of jazz dance, ballet, and something completely unique. He spun with the controlled strength of a trained dancer, but carried a relaxed masculinity that made the motion feel effortless. He crossed the stage with a smooth glide that suggested years of instinctive understanding about how a body should move through space. The most astonishing part wasn't just the beauty of the movement, it was the timing. Every step landed exactly where the music demanded, every gesture matched the phrasing of the melody. It wasn't guesswork, it was precise musical interpretation. Bob Fosse leaned forward, scribbling notes as fast as he could. Agnes DeMille watched with wide-eyed fascination. Maria Talchief slowly nodded in professional respect, but they were witnessing something they had not expected to see from a man who insisted he wasn't a dancer. When the music ended, Dean stopped instantly, as if someone had flipped a switch. He opened his eyes and looked toward the audience, suddenly aware that four of the greatest dance minds in America were staring at him in stunned silence. Finally, Bob Fosse broke the quiet with a whispered exclamation. Jack Cole stood up and walked slowly onto the stage. When he reached Dean, he extended his hand in a formal gesture that dancers use to acknowledge exceptional performance. "Mr. Martin," he said quietly, "where did you learn to move like that?" Dean shrugged slightly, embarrassed by the attention. "I didn't really learn it anywhere. I just listened to the music." Maria Talchief shook her head with admiration. "That wasn't just listening," she said. "That was interpreting. You were translating music into movement." Agnes DeMille stepped closer, examining him as if trying to solve a puzzle. "Have you had serious training?" she asked. "Because what you just demonstrated takes most dancers years to develop." Dean shook his head again. "Not really. Just a few lessons a long time ago." Bob Fosse finally spoke, still sounding amazed. "That level of control doesn't come from nowhere. There's technique in what you did." Jack Cole studied Dean with intense curiosity. "Would you ever consider developing your dance seriously?" he asked. "Because what we just saw suggests you could become a professional dancer." The suggestion caught Dean completely off guard. He laughed softly and shook his head. "I'm a singer," he replied. "The dancing just goes along with the music." But the professionals insisted that what he had shown was more than accompaniment. It was genuine artistry. Even Jerry Lewis, who had been watching quietly from the side of the stage, looked stunned. "Dean," Jerry said slowly, "we've been working together for years, and I had no idea you could do that." The short evaluation session that was supposed to last half an hour stretched into nearly 3 hours. The choreographers asked Dean to try different styles, different rhythms, different forms of improvisation. Each time he adapted effortlessly, revealing deeper layers of skill and creativity. During a break, Agnes DeMille whispered to Jack Cole in amazement, "It's like he's been hiding this ability in plain sight." Cole nodded. No one ever asked him to show it. By the time the afternoon ended, each of the dance masters had an offer for him. Jack Cole wanted to build an entire stage production around Dean's dancing. Bob Fosse was fascinated by the originality of his style and wanted to collaborate. Maria Talchief even suggested exploring the possibility of Dean working with her ballet company. Dean listened politely but remained grounded. He appreciated the compliments, yet he knew his life was already moving in another direction. The partnership with Jerry Lewis was thriving, and audiences loved the chemistry they shared. "I'm grateful for the offers," Dean told them sincerely, "but Jerry and I have something special going. I don't want to change that." Word of the incredible demonstration soon spread through Broadway circles. Among dancers and choreographers, the story of that afternoon became almost legendary. Yet Dean Martin himself never tried to capitalize on the discovery. He continued performing exactly as before, occasionally letting flashes of his remarkable movement ability slip into his stage presence, but never turning it into a centerpiece. Years later, long after the partnership between Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis had ended, audiences sometimes noticed brief moments in Dean's performances when his movement carried a surprising elegance. Those who had been present that day at the Majestic Theatre recognized those moments immediately. They were glimpses of the extraordinary talent he had revealed but never fully pursued. For Jack Cole, the memory stayed vivid for the rest of his career. Whenever he spoke to young dancers, he often told the story as a reminder that greatness sometimes hides where no one expects it. Dean Martin had walked into that theatre known as a singer who could move a little. He walked out recognized by the greatest dancers of his generation as someone who could have mastered their art. And yet, true to his easygoing nature, he simply smiled, went back to work beside Jerry Lewis, and let the secret remain part of his quiet, private brilliance.